Just going to hit record now, otherwise I will forget. How are you all doing? Betsy, nice to meet you. Thanks for your email last night. And nice to meet the rest of the group.
Nice to meet you as well. On our end, it's good morning. Not sure where it is for everybody else.
Mine too. I'm in California, so just starting the day. Britain's though in Michigan, so it's lunchtime there. Hey, David.
Hello.
Hi,
How's that
Stephen.
move?
Hey, Sarah.
How's that move, David?
Oh, I'm in the middle. It's good. Stuff's out of the house. It's on the way across country. Sitting in my sister-in-law's, seeing some friends to say goodbye. And then we head across country on the 17th. Thanks for asking. Yeah.
Hey, Stephen.
Wonderful. Well, let's get started just because we only have an hour together and I know it's going to be a great conversation and we want to hear lots about the work that you're doing. So for those who are not part of the R.O.C.K team, if you wouldn't mind just sharing in the chat your name, affiliation, and where you're calling in from, because we're not going to get a chance to do a complete around the room introduction, but I do want the folks from R.O.C.K to know who's on the line. And again, these are our steering committee members for the Nurture Connection network that is very excited to learn more about the work you're doing. So I'll jump right in and just provide a little bit of context and background for this session, and then we will jump into hearing more from you and hoping it's more of a conversational kind of format. No need to feel like we're having a formal interview or presentation or anything like that. So let me get started with a little bit of context. So the idea for these sessions, as I kind of shared via email, is for us to really start learning about what does it look like to promote early relational health or healthy early relationships between caregivers and young children in local context. So we're speaking to a variety of collaboratives, teams, organizations across the US who are promoting those healthy early relationships in their communities, in their clinics, in a variety of systems or different settings. And really trying to see what does that look like for your community? What are the accelerators of that work? What are potentially some of the barriers or challenges? And understanding from the family's perspective, what seem to be the things that they are experiencing that continually potentially get in the way of promoting those healthy early relationships that we all know every parent wants to have or caregiver wants to have with their child. So the idea here is we're going to record this session and then we'll figure out a way. We're kind of working on our end at the Health Plus Studio side to figure out how best to share your story with the broader Nurture Connection network. It may be, taking excerpts of this video, writing a blog post, etc. But we want to share kind of your lessons learned, your best practices, with others in the community to really kind of increase awareness of promoting early relational health and hopefully increase awareness of your program and investment and partnership in your program as well. So as I mentioned, our steering committee members, a few on the phone, are eager to listen and learn with you. I will be sharing the full recording with the rest of the steering committee. So there's 12 members total. So some of them weren't able to join today, but I know are really excited about learning more about the work that you're doing in Alaska. And I will be facilitating the conversation and asking some questions that we have. And then I'll invite at the end of the call our steering committee members to ask any questions that they have of your team, anything they want to follow up on or learn more about. But I do know that Bryn and David are very familiar with the work that you all do as well. And so, yeah, feel free to, as I'm asking questions, build off of each other, have a dialogue with each other, just as conversational as possible. We'd love to have the session feel informal in that way. So Betsy, thanks for sending me a little intro on R.O.C.K Matsu. So I'm just going to read that, just so we all have some context for who you guys are, and then we'll launch into the questions. Any questions from your end before we get started? No. All right, awesome. Great. So R.O.C.K Matsu, or Raising Our Children with Kindness, is a collaborative of community members, including individuals and organizations, joined together to promote family resilience and reduce child maltreatment. The collective works to create transformative systems change by building social supports, eliminating silos, and influencing systems that affect children and families throughout the Matanuska, please correct me, Susitna Borough of Alaska. Could you say that so I have it right? I apologize.
The Matanuska-Susitna Borough, or we go by Matsu for sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Betsy. I appreciate it. Of Alaska. Okay, great. Thank you. So I would love to just do a quick around the room, just brief introduction since it's a large team, but love to hear who you are, your role in this initiative, and just briefly, what brought you to this work? What really got you excited about joining this initiative or this collaborative? So I'll let maybe Betsy, just because we've been in communication, we can start with you, and then feel free to pass it to the rest of your team to introduce themselves.
Okay, thank you, Becky. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. I am Betsy Larson, and I am the director of R.O.C.K Matsu, which is a collective impact program in the Matsu. And I have been with the collective since almost the beginning. I was the second employee hired as a community coordinator part-time in one of our rural areas, and I drank more of the Kool-Aid and eventually landed in the director role about 3 years ago. So I've been guiding the collective through that. And initially my interest in the collective was really about the hope that the program brought into our community for our children, and being able to show up with this to work in a hopeful way was really exciting to me, and it continues to be today.
Mm-hmm.
I will hand it over to Megan for her introduction.
Hi, everyone. My name is Megan Ernst. I joined in 2020. I'm a program manager. I have long been connected in a lot of systems change and policy work, a lot of intersections with education and disability and discipline and equity work. But really, I think what brought me kind of full circle was just recognizing the connections that all of that has to do with the first years and family and connection. So, and also just really coming to a place where a lot of systems are hard to change. And R.O.C.K Matsu and the community really believes in the power of transformative change, and how impactful that is when you bring so many people together to really to have that. So that to me is what makes joining that team really rewarding. So that's really what drove me to want to join the team initially. So my work right now is as the project lead for the Hello Baby initiative, which is that primary focus for supporting pregnant people and families 0 to 5 in that universal prevention realm. So I can pass it over to Jessica. How about?
All right. My name is Jessica Clarkson. I have been affiliated with the collective since 2017. I've been a R.O.C.K employee just for the last year, but I was initially part of one of their early wins, which was the development of a safe babies court here for the Matsu. It's the only one in Alaska. And so R.O.C.K was the founding partner to kind of work with the court system to develop that. And so in 2022, last year, I officially moved into my role as a program manager And my primary role is to work with those with lived experience and to bring them into the collective and to support our partners in doing so. And so, so I work with those parent experts who are at the table. And so with that, I'm going to pass it off to Dana.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dana Chmielowski. I was brought on with R.O.C.K Matsu about 2 years ago for the Hello Baby, and I am a parent of the community with lived experience. And I have a passion of this because I was in addiction, and when we first got in, this was ranged for people in the higher tiers, people like me. And so I had a passion of helping parents in my shoes and try to give a parent's perspective on what can help and what we can do for our community, our vast community, to strengthen it. So thank you.
And Stephanie?
Yeah, I'll just jump in. I'm Stephanie Tucker. I'm actually a program director for an infant learning program in the Matsu. My connection with R.O.C.K is I've been on various committees for R.O.C.K, gosh, almost since the beginning. Currently, I'm on the steering committee for R.O.C.K, but I'm also part of the Hello Babies initiative. And my draw to it is it's almost like a natural outreach of what I do with infant learning, because it's all about being transdisciplinary and bringing in those teams and cross-hatching the whole community to support a family. And my passion comes from seeing a parent connect with their child. That's the most magical thing ever. So anything that drives us towards more of that happening is wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. And thanks for also bringing together such a diverse team as well to share your experiences and learnings with us. We really appreciate the thought that went into pulling this team together. So thank you. So I think the first question I'll ask is just to learn a little bit more about the collective. Really kind of what are the focus areas? It sounds like there's potentially multiple programs that might be going on. What are the goals, kind of who's involved? So I know you could probably go in a lot of different directions, but just for us to kind of better understand what this collective looks like, who's involved, and what's the work of the collective, that would be really helpful.
Sure, I can start with that. So the R.O.C.K Matsu Collective is actually born out of the Matsu Health Foundation, and they serve as our backbone organization. In 2013, they were required to do their first community health needs assessment. And in that, they learned that the community, one of the top 2 community priorities was to make sure the children were well cared for and safe. So the program officer at the time set about to pull together people and talk about how can we do differently for the children in Matsu and the families. And the group of influencers that I call them influencers, they're not the YouTube kind, but children and family influencers, came together and determined that they wanted to essentially build a system of care for children in the Matsu, because we don't have one system that cares for all things children. And they identified the collective impact model as a way of doing that together. So we started with 18 champions in the community, and we've now built out to roughly 60 agencies or so that we interact with on an annual basis, both within the Matsu Borough and then also statewide partners as well. So we've been operating as a collective since began activities in 2016 in the community and have been growing ever since. We have ebbed and flowed, but our collective is very ambitious, and we've had anywhere from 18 different strategies that span the public health spectrum to now we're trying to be more intentional and say our lane is narrower, and we've whittled it down to a small 12 initiatives that we're working on. So some working in the primary prevention spectrum, some in tertiary, secondary, and tertiary as well. Some of the things that we've prioritized along the way is thinking about equity and how we can promote that within our community. We've used the strengthening families model to help support our work along the way. And then also we work very deeply in systems change and have used the Water of Systems Change model to help guide that work as well, and have taken a deeper dive into that over the last couple of years. We have two big giant goals for our community, and that is to end child abuse and then also strengthen families. So approaching it from this two different angles, all of our strategies fit within those two goals. And those have been consistent throughout. So that's a snapshot. Just a context for where we live and work. The Mat-Su Borough is about the size of West Virginia, and the borough is kind of comparable to a county status in Alaska. And we have about 120,000 people. Most of those people live in what we call the core area. We get a couple of larger communities that are close together. And then we have people that live in very rural areas as well.
Great. Thanks, Betsy. I appreciate it. I know there's much more to dig into, and we'll get to it.
How many babies born per year?
Last I heard, it was about 1,500 per year. And we also have an unusual situation here where about half of those births occur outside of the hospital. A lot of home births and midwife births.
Yeah. Thanks, Betsy. So I'd love to hear just launching this collective, getting this off the ground. What did that take? What were some of the barriers to that? What were some of the accelerators? How did you find the right partners? Obviously, ensuring that there's parent partnership and leadership in this is very critical as well. I'd love to hear more about ensuring you're doing that in an equitable way that feels authentic to the parent's experience. So just generally launching, and then obviously pulling in the parent partnership piece would be really interesting to hear about as well. That's a core value of Nurture Connection, is that parent leadership, parent partnership piece.
Sure. I will give some historical context about R.O.C.K Mat-Su, but I think what I'll do is I will transition us into talking more about Hello Baby, because it's a bit more relevant to the work of Nurture Connection. But the collective itself, we started in 2014 by pulling together these champions, and they spent about 2 years with the facilitator very intentionally building out process to proceed so that they could embrace the collective impact framework, and they had operational guidelines in place. We're very fortunate to be embedded inside of the Mat-Su Health Foundation as our backbone organization. So we have strong support for funding and for staffing, and that's really helped us to be able to focus on the vision of the collective. We have had quite a few, as I mentioned, up to 18 different strategies. A lot of those focus on early childhood areas. We held an early childhood comprehensive systems grant for 5 years at the beginning of our work. We've built out a community baby shower, which has been recognized across the nation even. Jessica mentioned the Safe Babies Court that was another initiative of ours as well. So those are just some examples. But in that, we were also thinking about how can we bring the community voice in even more. So we have experimented with a lot of different community engagement models and trying to make them fit inside the Mat-Su Borough, which is tricky because they are mostly built in, most models that you are able to tap into are built in urban settings where you have an abundance of people in close proximity to each other, and we don't have that. So we've had to stretch the models and try and make them fit. We've learned a lot along the way about how that works and how it doesn't work. And then Jessica was actually brought on board last year to be able to start focusing on how can we build something for the Mat-Su Borough that really helps us bring that community and parent voice into that work. So Jessica, I'm going to hand it off to you if if you have more you would like to add to that. But I think too, I don't want to direct the conversation, but I think because R.O.C.K Matsu is so big, I think if we can zero in on Hello Baby and that initiative, that would probably be more relevant to this group.
That's great. Yeah, Jessica, we'd love to hear more about the work that you're doing around community and parent involvement.
Sure, I can certainly do that. I'm wondering if it would be helpful to kind of have a better sense of Hello Baby broadly, and then move into how the parent voice fits into that. I'm not sure if where we want to start.
Sure, let's do that. Who's the best person to share more about Hello Baby and that initiative?
You can go ahead and just, all of us can talk about it, so it's fine.
Okay. Well, I think from the beginning, Hello Baby has been very intentional about having parent voice. And we, in the beginning, there was, I'll let Meg give a little bit more of the story. So we're going to kind of be coming into Hello Baby, chapter 2, and Meg can fill us in the beginning. We've had and Dana, you need to come off mute and jump in at any moment. Okay.
Okay.
So we've had parents' voice at the table from the very beginning, because you can't do anything around early childhood if you don't have parents at the table. And so the parents at the table, especially Dana, has been incredibly foundational to not only the structure of Hello Baby, but really the mission and the vision of it all. And so at this point, Dana, why don't you talk about your involvement from the beginning, and how it's kind of ebbed and flowed, and really how you have become one of the central core members of Hello Baby.
Okay, I can do that. So I was brought on by a fellow Hello Baby member 2 years ago. And the reason why I was brought on is because I have lived experience. And as I said before, we were initially, Hello Baby was directed for the higher tiers, like, high risk mothers. And I was a mother who gave birth in addiction. And so I had rebuilt my life back together, but I didn't have the support of the community. I didn't know what resources were available. And so I went through that whole process alone. And so when I was originally brought on, that was what I wanted to do, because we can give hope not only to the children, but families, that we can do that. And so in the 2 years, excuse me, when I first was brought on, it was intimidating because I was the only a parent of lived experience, and everybody was professional. So it was intimidating. But throughout the years, it's just been amazing, because my voice is heard, and having a parent with the community, especially with lived experience, we think differently. So things that like on a clinical side, they'd be like, okay, for our core values, and then we would think, well, this should be a core value, or, and it's actually been amazing, because I found out that I could be kind of middle ground to everything, because we got different agencies, and, agencies don't want to say anything. And so there was a decision where I just said, we should just have one agency, or one person per agency, and everybody was on board, but nobody could say that. And so it was just nice having a mutual, just being able to say what I wanted to say. Sorry, I'm nervous, but yeah, so it's just been really amazing to be a part of something that can help our Bay community, and that's my passion. I don't know if I steered off the question, but
No, thanks, Dina. Can you just share a little bit about kind of like what does your involvement look like typically, kind of throughout the month, the year, whatever that might look like, but just like what does that involvement look like?
So I am brought on for the Hello Baby meetings, which is originally about once a month. And I do keep up to date with Jessica Clarkson. She's kind of my mentor through all this, which I couldn't have done it without her. And it's just nice to have another person I can talk to. There's meetings, so mostly once a month, and sometimes there's in-person meetings more, but it's pretty much, and then whatever they need us to do on the side and stuff like that. So
I can fill in a little bit here too. I think
thank you.
originally too, so to give a little bit more context, some of where Hello Baby first started was a collaboration ask with the state of Alaska to kind of help address plans of safe care initiative, which is an unfunded mandate. And throughout that conversation, there really was a community conversation about where values lied in terms of supporting families. And at that point, that was where R.O.C.K Metsu was bringing our family voice to the table. And that conversation was happening with parents, with Dana at the table about what does it mean to support a family? And it was Dana and some other parents that were saying, this is important to us about what it means to ask for help and how hard it is. The stigma and what it means to care for a family and all of these things, it was their voice that talked about those things that changed the course and the trajectory for the people at the table. And it was powerful. So the mission and the values and the goals that set course for Hello Baby today happen because of the voice of them showing up as themselves in that moment. And it was such a pivotal and powerful point because they didn't necessarily recognize that they had such power because they felt vulnerable, but they were leaning into that vulnerability by trying to just share for themselves what they needed, and they were following that. But people listened because they were also showing up as themselves. But it changed the course for Hello Baby in a way that everybody was wanting, but they really needed something to be able to say, yes, we've got it. This is what we want. And so at that moment, I would say it was a pivotal point. And since then, Dana, to be very honest, I would say, is a leader at the core team. We have a very central core team of people within Hello Baby that are really driving that systems change work for how to kind of do some parallel recognition that in order for us to support families to nurture their own primary relationships, the system itself has got to engage really deeply in that transformational relationship work cross-sector wise and with each other to be able to do that. And I think Dana has started to also recognize too that what she sometimes says is organizations are people too. And that has been like life-changing for her too. So we're seeing just so much transformational relationship happening. And so I think there's just so much that's happening in this space. So I just wanted to give a little bit of kind of context there. And I did see a chat question come in and that distracted me for a minute, but I'll take a second to kind of look at that. And if somebody else wants to jump into.
Yeah, I think I can answer it. I've got two pivotal things where, two pivotal points, and Dana, I want you to jump in here too, because they both, I think they both involve you. One was when we were discussing the mission statement of Hello Baby, and there were several professionals, and me included, that were really struggling with the word success, like including that parents wanted to have success. And because success can be determined in so many different ways, that I was very nervous about having the word success in a mission statement, right? And so I was struggling with that. And I was in a different position than I am now. And Dana kind of pressed back on me and a couple of the other parents at the table saying, no, that's actually what we want for ourselves. We want success. We want to be able to define it, but we certainly want it. And so we want success in the mission statement for that reason. And then it was like, how can you argue with that? There is no arguing with that. And so success was included. The word success was included in the mission statement. Another point, and Dana kind of referenced it, happened very recently, where there was this tug and pull of, is Hello Baby, are we designing it for the Mat-Su? Or are we designing it in a way that potentially it could spread beyond the Mat-Su, right? And so there's some natural tension in that. And so we kind of wrestled with it as a group and said, no, we're doing this for us, for our backyard, right? And whatever happens to it in the future, we're not going to worry about that in the moment. This is for us. So we kind of wrestled with that. And in that, there was this, okay, well, if it's Mat-Su focused, then how are we going to decide how decisions are made? And that's when Dana said, I think it should be one person and one person per agency. Because what was happening is there was multiple people from different agencies. And when she said it, it made such sense and such clarity. But what it also did is it leveled the playing field. Because if there's a CEO has one vote and Dana has one vote. And so it really centered everybody on that playing field. And so that was also another real pivotal moment in she is equal to us regardless of her previous, because of her previous experiences, she is an equal. And so those are two pivotal moments where there are many. And so Dana, are there other examples that you can think of or that you'd want to share? Because there are a lot.
Not at the moment. I mean, there's many, but not off the top of my head right now. So.
Yeah, and I know language has been something that we've all really struggled with. And Stephanie, why don't you jump in here? Because I know you've got examples of this.
Okay, yeah. So we were actually just talking about this yesterday. I mean, there's some language, and so like there was moments where they were talking their agency lingo, and I have no training. I have no idea what they're saying. So there's been a time where I just finally said, I can't do my job because I don't know what you guys are speaking. I don't know what it is. And so finally that was like a moment where I could hear my voice and said, I'm not doing my job to help this collaborative. I'm not being helpful if I don't understand what you guys are saying. And so that was nice. They gave me a list of things so I could go write them down and understand, because I don't know other than being in this thing. I mean, Hello Baby, I don't know what you guys are saying. And just like even certain words, like when we're going through the list of questions, like equity. So I was like, I had to Google it because my first thought was coming like, the financial equity. And so I didn't, so it was just like, so having, and Jessica calls it living room language. So the professionals have like, made words or described to me so I can understand them, because they are so used to speak in a certain way professionally. But if you're not a professional tied to any agency, I don't know, it's like Latin. So to be able to where like parents can understand. And so we find a middle ground, which was amazing, because as I said, it was intimidating, especially when you don't know and you're trying to keep up and you just don't feel like you're, being useful because you can't understand. And so that was nice to be able to speak up, and everybody helped me out through that. So.
Well, Dana has allowed others in the room that are coming from different agencies and sectors to often recognize that they also don't understand the language that others are also speaking, but that they assume that they understand. And so we have gotten much better about not assuming that we are sharing the same language. So we're much slower in how we're deliberating and talking and defining and working through these things. So
great. Thank you for those examples. And yeah, I mean, that's so important. And every agency and every state and every community has that different lingo. And so it is so important that at a base level, everyone's understanding the conversation. I'd love to hear, so as you guys know, the Nurture Connection Network, it's all about promoting what we call early relational health, which is just those healthy relationships very early on in life. So prenatally through 3 years old, how do we promote healthy relationships between caregivers, whether that's parents or others who are acting as primary caregivers to young children? We'd love to hear more. So it sounds like we've been discussing it kind of whether it's your steering committee or some decision-making body around these issues. We'd love to hear more, how are you promoting those healthy early relationships within Hello Baby? What does that actually look like in practice to support families to build those emotional connections or those relationships, or remove barriers that may be in their way to having those healthy early relationships? So I'd love to just hear what does that actually look like in practice to promote healthy early relationships, and maybe what's helped accelerate that, what gets in the way. So I'll turn it over because I'm not sure who is best to speak to that, but we'd love to hear more what this looks like in practice.
would you like to take that, Stephanie?
I had a feeling that one was coming my way. That comes my way because it's my language, because that is what, that's what infant learning does. But to describe it for Hello Baby, I think of it in terms of the parallel process. I'm going to fall back on reflective language and neuro-relational framework language. There's a parallel process that happens. So on the very top level, on the organizational level for Hello Baby, there's a lot of relationship building, serve and return interaction, group support, or if you know Circle of Security, hands on the circle. And we're doing that together as partners between agencies. Dana and I will have interactions. I have interactions with other agency people. So on that level, we're having the relationship start there. But that is then paralleled between an agency and a family they're working with, which then gets paralleled between the family and the child they're working with. It's the basic concept that all ILP works on. But it is also the basic concept of what is happening with Hello Baby. And so as we're creating things, of course, we're getting the parent voice in there as a leading voice so that anything we build is built with the idea of true accessibility in mind, and with using language and strategies and different ways of accessing us that allow for families to not just hear that it's important to have that relational health with their children, but to actually see what it looks like and to feel what it feels like to be held on that circle. Hopefully that made sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And so thank you for this kind of these layers of relationship and interaction and connection. I think that's so important, and having that modeled throughout a system is really interesting and seems critical to this work. When the agencies are there, yeah, I guess I'm wondering kind of at the family level, at the caregiver child level, are there certain programs that you're promoting through Hello Baby, and just giving us a sense of that at the more individual or family unit level?
So when Hello Baby is fully launched, the idea is that there would be kind of a naturally organized or kind of an organic way of connecting to different resources in the Valley, that we're this massive network and families can connect to all of us through Hello Baby. Some of that would be warm connections, and some of that would be just referrals or seeing something on a website. Once they're at an agency, all of us are committed to holding that family so that family can hold that child, and to fostering those connections between the parent and the child. I can speak mostly to my own agency and what we do, because our main goal is not to come in and fix a kid for a family. Our goal is to sit alongside a parent and work with them to connect better with their child, to support their child's needs. The other agencies that I partner most with are on board with that as well. So we have like our local Head Start organization. We have an organization called R.O.C.K Family Services that does a lot of parents as teachers and different ways of coming alongside a family, so that instead of teaching, directing, we're coming alongside, we're hearing their experience, and then we're supporting them in changing that experience.
Mhm. So Stephanie, so it sounds like you have a variety of agencies coming together who are all family serving agencies, programs, supports, along with parent voice and leadership. And then, so in terms of how you then support those agencies, for instance, to potentially have a different mindset while they're interacting, what does that actually look like? How do you inform agencies of their work directly with families? Is there a program? Is it just through discussion? I just love to understand, how are you transforming systems? How are you changing practice within agencies through this work?
So I feel like this is something that transcends Hello Baby. This is R.O.C.K Matsu's goal.
Okay.
And so there are, we have monthly partnership meetings where there is a learning moment that talks about an initiative that's going on, paired with a learning moment that talks about an agency or program that's operating in the area. We have one-on-one conversations. There's a whole lot of trainings that R.O.C.K has hosted and supported, so that different members of the community and different agencies can get involved and learn a little bit more about all of this. We network with each other. So during those partnership meetings, we have time at the end so that we can actually talk to each other one-on-one or in little groups, so that we can get more understanding from each other about what each of us is doing and how we can get involved. A lot of it is just a lot of different kinds of meetings. Some of them are impromptu, some of them are planned, some of them are trainings, some of them are just little coffee chats. Jessica hosted a book club that a bunch of us joined so that we could talk about Parent Nation. So there's all these different kind of ways of matriculating all the information out to each of us and allowing everybody to kind of grasp onto it at a level that connects for them.
Beautifully said, Stephanie. We have done a lot of trainings along the way. And she's covered quite a bit of it, but having that focus on being able to build out a trauma-informed community, there's been quite a few trainings around that. We've done a lot to inform our community about adverse childhood experiences and resilience on top of that. So it's been this ongoing building over the last 7 years or so within our community. And we see shifts in our partnership in the way that they talk with and to each other. So we can feel that it's changing. And then Hello Baby is an extension of that work.
Wonderful. Thank you both. Thanks, Betsy and Stephanie, for that. So I'd love to talk a little bit about impact, whether you are collecting, more formally collecting data, or just stories of success potentially, or stories of impact, whether that's at a family level or at an agency level, whatever feels most right, or even within yourselves. What impacts have you felt and seen in this work? So I'll just open it up to the whole group, just wanting to hear more about the impact that you have seen, measured, felt through this work.
Megan, I'm wondering if you want to take this and talk a bit about the group dynamics.
Yeah. So Hello Baby is really in its beginning of implementation phase work. So we are really developing a robust evaluation plan. So that to us is really important in terms of really combining kind of that qualitative and quantitative measures. but in terms of where our focus has really been is thinking about that core team of people and how they are working together relationally. So thinking about what makes a cohesive team, how to measure vulnerability and relational health as a team in relation to the system improving over time. So really that's kind of where my interest in the system change kind of realm is to be able to see how is the core team functioning in terms of trust and, being aligned and the way they're working, and also how is the family in our community being held? Are those two things working together, or do they somehow shift not together? Do those things get held at the same time? Because that to me, I have a feeling that they might improve at the same time. When people are able to hold each other in close relationship, then they're able to hold families in better relationship as well. So that's some of what I would like us to start really thinking about, and then building in just more of that reflective practice themselves, and having that be something that becomes a better habit to just really reflect more continually on what is it we're learning, and how can we be more agile in terms of who is our family and what can we do to be better. So I want to let other people speak to and think about what it is we learn. And
I'm gonna jump in because I know we have plans, and we are in the middle of working on measurements like pre and post surveys and ongoing surveys to measure the impact to families directly. But just in the process of building this, because we've really just been in the process of building it, in the process of building it from an agency standpoint, what I've seen already is some of the barriers to collaborating with other agencies are coming down, or we're finding workarounds, or we're finding ways to address them, and we're teaming together to address some of the barriers each of us has, even to just serving families. So there's collaborations happening that were not happening before the Hello Baby group came to the table, at least amongst the core team. I'm thinking just yesterday or earlier this week, we had a meeting, and at that meeting, a team member brought up a family that they were having difficulty serving. And by the end of the meeting, they found a way to serve that family just because we were all at that table together. And so things like that are happening more often. And when it happens for that one family, it's okay, so the next time this issue comes up, we got a way to get in there. So even on that scale, just with the building a framework and an idea, we've already got impacts happening.
Anyone else want to share around impact, stories of success? What have you seen that's changed because of these efforts thus far? And I understand you're still in the building phase as well. So, but just wanted to create a little more space if anyone else had anything to share.
I've got some from just the larger collective, because I've been part of the larger R.O.C.K collective in different capacities. We had a parent that graduated from the Safe Babies court, which was, it's in our area, it's called Families with Infants and Toddlers. And that individual is now a partner in one of the agencies and is serving families, and has been a vocal, she is going through training to be part of our drug endangered children task force. And so her voice is now being shared in different capacities in leadership positions throughout the valley. And so that's just one small example of when we work as a collective on in different agencies in different capacities, just like Stephanie talked about. When we come together in one space, because our community is so small, it is naturally affecting other spaces. And so that's one success story. But when you loop it back to Hello Baby, because we're so Meg has done such a phenomenal job of really focusing on relationships and how we work with each other, and not only how we work with each other, but when we work with each other, and how do we resolve conflict, like really leaning into those really difficult areas of relationships. That has trickled into the other aspects of when we work together in different areas and on different topics. And so that's what has been so beautiful, you know, to me, is that we as professionals are learning how to work with each other differently. And then we're also learning from parents how to work better with parents, and how do we incorporate parent voices into all of our agencies. And that's what, you know, Bryn is going to be working with Dana and I to do, and how to support our agencies in bringing parents into their work. And so it's all of these. Stephanie does a really good job of talking about the parallel processes that are all happening in all of these different areas. And it just, she does a really good job of making sure that we're taking the language of what we're doing, that she's giving us that early relational health language.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Jessica. And it was so, as you guys were speaking about both Megan and Stephanie, these parallel processes, we feel the same way. We have a core steering committee, as you guys know, and so much of what we believe the effectiveness of that committee is that relational connection between the committee members, and being able to, over the last year plus, create spaces where people, and I think, Bryn, this was maybe your language, can show up brave, where you can show up at brave spaces, safe spaces, where you can show up and be vulnerable given different experiences. But we haven't, you know, Meg, as you start really figuring out how do you measure that, we'd love to learn from that, because we feel it, we believe it, but, you know, how might you think about measuring that vulnerability? I think of Brene Brown, actually, knowing that she's like our national vulnerability researcher. But how do you actually measure that and kind of track that over time? So as you guys get into that work, we'd love to learn from you about how you're thinking about that, because I think it does really matter when your leadership group has that connection, creates that space to do the work, especially when you're doing early relational health work.
Can I provide a couple of examples?
Yeah,
at the R.O.C.K level, we've done some more academic things where we've used the partner tool to measure the strength of our network. We've worked with the Population Change Institute and their collective community capacity survey, I think is what it's called. We've used that once, and we're planning to do it again to measure the strength of the network, and it's helped us. But in terms of measuring, I can give you a really fun example. Our steering committee, we take the time to really get to know each other too. Each of our meetings, we start with a connection question, and we try and connect as humans to each other. And last fall, we were coming out of the pandemic, hadn't seen each other much in person, and decided that we were going to do our strategic planning in person at a location, on an offsite location. And it was at a hotel that had just opened up a Nordic spa, outdoor hot and cold pools and saunas and things like that. And I cautiously and hesitantly suggested that maybe the night before we did our strategic planning, that we gather in our bathing suits in November in the snow outside. So very hesitantly, I said, this is optional. You do not have to come. We're just offering this as a self-care thing. And everybody came except for one person who wasn't able to attend. And everybody was in their in their swimming suits, and they were laughing and giggling and doing all of the inappropriate, loud behaviors that you're not supposed to do at a spa. And that, to me, is a measurement of success of relationship at the steering committee level, at least. But we watch for things like that, you know, in the way that we operate together.
Thanks, Betsy. Yeah, it's like ultimate vulnerability, showing up with your colleagues in your bathing suit. That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. That's great. So I know we only have about 5 minutes. I did want to ask one last question, and then David and Stephen and Bryn and Sarah and Melinda, if you have any questions, maybe put them in the chat and we can get to them. But just very quickly, what has surprised you about the work? What has happened that you did not anticipate? Yeah, what has been something that has surprised you about this work?
I'm watching faces to see if I'm ready to jump in. Speaking on broadly the collective, I think the biggest surprise for me is the strength of our work throughout the pandemic. When we had to pivot and everybody was stressed, our collective kept charging forward in the ways that we could. And we're stronger today than we were before the pandemic because of it. And our collective has really leaned into this hard unpacking of systems. And that's where our people are showing up to do the work. It's not the easy wins anymore. They're ready to roll their sleeves up and keep on going.
Yeah, I'd echo Betsy on that, the real surprise has been, this started out as plans of safe care and really a tiny target population. And our community, as we came together, especially due to voices like Dana's, said, no, we don't want to target just these people. We want to destigmatize and target everybody because everybody needs this. And we're going to do this on a bigger level, a systems change level. And it was really surprising to see. I don't think there was an agency or a person who stepped away from that. Everybody stepped into that and went, yes, this is where we need to show up. And that was surprising, encouraging, just, it was cool. It was like the chills down your spine moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great,
Yeah.
thank you. So I want to, David put a couple questions in the chat. The first was around engagement with the Native Alaskan population and just the number. Does anyone want to take that first question? I know we only have a couple minutes.
Sure. We have 2 tribal partners that work regularly with us, the Chickaline Native Village and Connect Tribal Council. And within the Mat-Su, we have roughly 15 to 20% of our population is Alaska Native. And that is growing right now. The diversity within our community, you can see within the 0 to 8 demographics that is rapidly changing.
I think another thing to add to that, there's a lot of fluidity and movement of families within Alaska. And part of that has to do with the ruralness of so many communities. And within the Native Alaskan population in particular, there can be a lot of movement. So the Anchorage is just about an hour away. And so their births can sometimes be a misleading number because babies can be born in another region, but families can live in a totally different region. So we can have families that live in the Mat-Su, but babies born somewhere else. And so there's a lot of movement of families, either for parts of the year for subsistence reasons and things like that. So there's a lot of understanding of just, I think that's the other reason why things like Hello Baby are so important, because support is sometimes a very fluid thing for a family. And so it makes asking for help even that much more difficult. But I think Alaskans in particular, they like to ask or offer assistance, but that is a different thing. And so trying to flip that script that Hello Baby is providing assistance, because Alaskans do like to do that, is offering. But yeah, so there's a lot of flexible, movement, and a big increase in population and demographics happening in the valley as well.
And some of that movement with Alaska Native families specifically, crisis medical care or high needs medical care, specialty medical care, that's pretty much all out of Anchorage. So families come from villages. They don't want to live in Anchorage. It's a little big and a little overwhelming, and they end up living in the Mat-Su temporarily or permanently, depending on what's going on. But just due to someone in the family having a higher medical need or a need to connect to something that comes out of Anchorage, they'll land in the Mat-Su. So we have a lot of people moving, specifically Alaska Native families moving in and out from villages because they might have a family member or a tribal member based out of Mat-Su that they can stay with or get connected with.
And just a point of clarification, Hello Baby includes Native Alaskan families.
Everyone. Mhm.
Yeah. Great, thank you.
Wonderful. Well, I know we're at time, 1 minute over. Thank you so much to your whole group for participating in this session. We've learned so much and really appreciate the variety and diverse perspectives that this team has brought to this call, and very much look forward to continuing collaboration. I know you guys are working with Bryn and have a close connection with David. But we'd love to continue just the broader partnership with Nurture Connection and R.O.C.K Mat-Su, knowing we're working on very similar goals in terms of promoting family well-being really at the end of the day. And how do you do that across a variety of contexts and communities? So we will be in touch in terms of figuring out how we want to share your story and the lessons learned, the insights that from R.O.C.K Mat-Su with our broader Nurture Connection community. And we'll be ensuring that you feel comfortable in the way that we are sharing that and all of that. So keep an eye out for an email from likely the Health Plus Studio team, which on this call is myself, Sarah, and Melinda. But yeah, we look forward to continuing the broader connection and collaboration between Nurture Connection and R.O.C.K Mat-Su. But thank you very much for your time and sharing, your stories and being vulnerable with us in this space. We really appreciate it and have learned so much. So thank you. And yeah, we look forward to continuing to stay in touch with this group.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You all.
Thank you.
Okay. Talk to you all soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.